Hello, welcome. Thanks for coming back. This is the Lost Songs of Ireland podcast. I'm your host, Bill O'Brien. Today we're going to be looking and talking a little bit about Slievenamon, which is a mountain in South Tipperary, just a few miles from Kilkenny, very, very South Tipperary, just outside Clonmel. It's a very tall mountain. It's the biggest peak you can see for miles around in any direction. And it's a mountain that has an immense amount of folklore attached to it that go back thousands of years. So Slievenamon is mostly recognised and known from the song written by Charles Kickham, which I'm not going to play for you because it's a very, very well-known, very popular song. And it's Kickham's best-known song, and it's pretty much become an anthem of Tipperary. The song, "The Maid of Slievenamon," it's actually called. It's most commonly called Slievenamon. Now, so Slievenamon, the mountain itself, the name translates from Irish to the Mountain of the Women, or the Women's Mountain, and for a long time, hundreds, thousands of years, there's been oral history, oral folklore attached to Slievenamon, centred around women. In the early cycles of Irish folklore, the banshee, which would be the what now we call the fairy or the fae folk. But in early Irish folklore, these were essentially gods. It was a race of gods inhabited islands, and when the modern day Gaels came over, we had a little bit of a fight with them, and won, and the gods were banished beneath the earth, beneath the ground, which is a really interesting, very, very interesting origin story in terms of folklore. I'm not aware of any other nation or national folklore whereby which people defeated and banished their own gods, which is why today the fae folk, the fairy folk, kind of known as being quite mischievous, because according to the story, they weren't very happy about being banished underground. Another common name for the fairy folk, or the Sidhe in Ireland, are the people of the mounds, and this is deeply rooted in folklore. Ireland is covered in Mesolithic and Neolithic tombs and constructions that are now known as mounds. You can see them on maps as fairy forts and ring forts and dunes and enclosures. But back before the days of archaeology, they were just known as mounds, and they were known as a place to be very careful of, to stay away and not to disturb, because it was believed that the Sidhe, the previous gods who inhabited this land, were banished there and they lived there, and they weren't too happy with us humans walking around on the surface of the earth while they had to remain underground. So Slievenamon was heavily associated with the god Anya, which is a generic earth goddess. I mean, it's there are earth goddesses in nearly every iteration of folklore. Ireland had many different earth goddesses, and they kind of acted. I've heard them described kind of like a little postcode, depending on where you are in Ireland. There would have been a different earth goddess. In Tipperary, it was Anya. In the area around Limerick, Tipperary, Cork, Anya, Aine, was the earth goddess most associated with the land, with fertility, these kinds of things. And in the later cycles of Irish Celtic folklore and mythology, the Fenian cycle, which is associated with Finn McCool, holds a very, very important part in the story of Finn McCool. So Finn McCool is essentially the Irish version of Hercules. He was in love with a woman called Grania, and he held a competition on Slievenamon apparently Finn McCool was a dashing young blade, very, very popular with the ladies. When it came for the time for him to choose a wife, what he did is he held a race of the women, and this became a tradition. This became a tradition for many, many years in Slievenamon as well. It was essentially a race to get to the top of the mountain. All of the women who wanted to claim Finn McCool's hand in marriage, well, it's a race from the bottom to the top of Slievenamon, and whoever got to the summit first became Finn McCool's wife. Now, Finn was in love with Grania, and he cheated. He kind of told her a shortcut, according to the folklore anyway. He told her a shortcut to get to the top of the mountain so that she had an advantage over all of the other women in this race. And obviously she won. She got to the mountain first and took the hand of Finn McCool. Now, the tale of Finn and Grania is another epic. It's an epic story. It's an epic love story. Grania wasn't faithful to Finn McCool. She ran off with one of his best friends, one of his men-at-arms, Dermot. And Finn then went on a great big hunt all up and down islands trying to find Dermot and Grania, where they'd hide. And there was a curse placed. He'd had a curse placed upon the two of them, so that anywhere that they lied, I think that they would die if they laid on the ground, if they slept on the ground together. So what Grania and Dermot did is they ran around islands trying to escape the watchful eyes of Finn McCool and everyone that he'd sent out to try and find them. And they constructed dolmens to sleep on, to avoid sleeping on the grounds. And I'm not 100% sure. Like, some stories say that they would die if they slept on the ground. Others say that they'd be found if they slept on the ground. But this is one of the origin stories of dolmens in Ireland, is that they were built by Dermot and Grania trying to escape the watchful eye of Finn McCool. And this love story all started on Slievenamon. So the wealth of mythology attached to Slievenamon is very, very deep before we even get into any songs or ballads written about the mountain, of which there are literally hundreds. There are so many songs and poems written about Slievenamon. So it's you can tell straight away it's very, very deeply important to Irish history, to Irish folklore, the stories around it, and as well as that, the psyche of the people around it. It's a very big, huge, imposing mountain that can be seen from miles away in every direction. Back in the day, people wrote songs, they made stories up about the things that they can see, and to see Slievenamon, all you have to do is raise your eyes, and it's there staring you in the face. It's a very dominating peak. So it's no surprise at all that there are so many songs written about this mountain. Now the first song I'm gonna play for you is a little bit it's very, very well known song, but it seems to me to be quite well misunderstood. The Moon Behind the Hill was written by a man called William Keneally, who was from just outside of Clonmel in South Tipperary. He would have grown up under the shadow of Slievenamon himself. He then went on to become the editor of the Kilkenny Journal, which is the oldest running newspaper in Ireland. It still prints today. Incidentally, when he got the job of editor of this newspaper, the other man that was in the running to become the editor was in fact Charles Kickham. Keneally got the job. Both of these men were obviously contemporaries. They would have known each other. They grew up very close to each other, and they were both ballad writers. So they're both ballad writers and very, very staunch nationalists. So it's no surprise whatsoever that these two men knew each other. So as far as I can tell, the air to this song is original. Original to The Moon Behind the Hill, and the hill referenced in the song is Slievenamon. Now, it's the song is very, very associated with Kilkenny, because William Keneally in his later life was very active in Kilkenny. He was the mayor of Kilkenny as well as the editor of its biggest newspaper. So he would have been a very, very well-known, very celebrated man in Kilkenny of his day. And today, the song "The Moon Behind the Hill" is still sung in Kilkenny. It's known as a Kilkenny song, but quite interestingly, it's written about a mountain that lays in Tipperary. So I'm going to play now here. It's sung by Michael O'Dwyer. This was a very well-known song in its time, and it's "The Moon Behind the Hill."
Last night the rising moon upon a foreign strand, till memories came like flowers of June, of home and fatherland. I dreamt I was a child once more, beside the bright as morning beams. It brought me back my own sweet lore, the castle and the mill, until my eyes could see no more the moon behind the hill. When I'm gone, oh, may some tongue the minstrel's wish fulfill, and still remember him who sang the moon behind the hill.
Okay, that was recorded in 1976 by Michael Dwyer, "The Moon Behind the Hill." Now, after looking into this song, "The Moon Behind the Hill," a few months ago, I didn't. It had just been told to me it was a Kilkenny song, and that's all I knew. And I looked up a little bit about the history of it, and when I found out that William Keneally was from South Tipperary at the foot of Slievenamon, it immediately connected me to another balladeer and a song that I had previously been looking at and had shoved to the back of my mind. I've been doing a lot of work recently following and digging up information and songs written by a man called Thomas Ryan, who went by the name of Drangan Boy, from Drangan in Tipperary, which is just up the road from Mullinahone, below Slievenamon. He would have been a young boy when Charles Kickham was at the height of his fame. So obviously very, very well influenced by Charles Kickham, and another contemporary of Kickham, William Keneally, also from the locality, who'd written "The Moon Behind the Hill." And one of the songs that I'd found from Thomas Ryan, a Dragon Boy, was called "The Old House in the Glen." and I'd been trying to figure out the air to this. I suspected it might have been the Rocks of Bourne. Somebody had told me that it was the air was close to the Rocks of Bourne, but not quite. But after finding out that Thomas Ryan grew up just up the road from William Keneally before he moved to Kilkenny, it's certain that Thomas Ryan would have heard this song, would have known this song, because it's Keneally's best known song that he'd ever written. And a young lad who grew up to be a balladeer himself would definitely have been aware of this song. The meter matches, the timing matches, so I'm absolutely certain that the air to this song, The Old House in the Glen, is the same as The Moon Behind the Hill. And I'm quite proud of the little bit of detective work that I had to do to come up to that, to come with that conclusion. So I'll sing this for you now, The Old House in the Glen. It's about his old school. Now, Thomas Ryan, as a literate man in the mid-1800s, would have gone to a hedge school. Sorry, as a literate Catholic Irish man in the 1800s, he would have gone to a hedge school, because, as I previously mentioned, Catholics were forbidden to gain an education under the penal laws that were enacted at the time. Hedge schools were illegal clandestine schools that were set up and hidden. They were called hedge schools because they were very often behind a hedge in a little shack or a mud hut, or they'd often be in someone's barn, anywhere that's unofficial, somewhere hidden that the authorities wouldn't find, or they'd be slightly hidden, or they could easily turn a blind eye to, was a hedge school. The teachers of these hedge schools was extremely informal. But basically, if you could read and write and you owned a couple of books, that's all the qualifications you needed to become a hedge school master. Hedge school masters often would travel around the country and set up schools for a few months, move to another part of the country, and essentially the farm labourers, the farm workers that sent their children to these schools were trying to. First of all, it was very much a babysitting service to send the kids, have them go somewhere, have somebody watching over them, and also having your child a chance to be literate, to read and write, would have put them at a huge advantage at the time, because it was such a rare thing for Irish Catholics to be literate, because it was quite literally illegal. So, without any more ado, this is The Old House in the Glen, a song that I found initially in the school's archive, written down and attributed to Thomas Ryan, a dragon boy. I've since found it published in books. I can find no recordings of this song. I can find no clues to what the music is, other than me figuring out it based on the meter and the geographical timeline of other songs that would have been sung in the area. So, anyway, this is The Old House in the Glen by Thomas Ryan, a dragon boy. Real scenes of life before me now are shifting one by one. Each actor plays his part and goes, but when each act is done, old memories hover around me, and I'm a boy again. On fancy's wings I'm born to the old house in the glen. Oh, sweet the retrospection of the happy days of yore, when by the crystal stream I played, that rippled past the door, with Johnny James and Mary Ann, a bright-eyed Colleen then. Oh, how we wished the fairies took the old house in the glen. Where are they now, companions of those happy bygone years, when youthful breasts were troubled not with world's hopes and fears? No cares were ours but romp and play. Oh, we were happy then. We dreaded but the master of the old house in the glen, one where Ohio's waters roll, had found an exile's grave. Another rests his weary head beneath Atlantic's wave, and Mary Ann is by me yet, so fresh and fair as when. Together oft we hurry to the old house in the glen. The house now crumbles into ruin, the master's dead and gone. The ivy trees are standing still, the river ripples on. No more upon its verdant banks at midday's heard the ring of merry cherub voices from the old house in the glen. Right, that was The Old House in the Glen by Thomas Ryan, a Dragon Boy. So I've been doing, like as I said, been doing quite a lot of work looking into Thomas Ryan. I've collected, I think, around 50 poems and songs that he's written, and he's used that air multiple times as well. There's almost nothing exists in writing or in print or any recorded history of anything Thomas Ryan has ever done. I found 5 of his poems printed in old folklore, old songbooks, and that's it. Nobody seems to know who he is. People who listen to this podcast regularly know that I live in Tipperary, and I'm very active in ballad singing. No one I've spoke to has ever heard of Thomas Ryan, a Dragon Boy, and in his time he was very, very prolific. He wrote for several newspapers as a journalist. I've gotten quite a few of his articles that he's written as well, and he worked at the local creamery. He was very, very active civically in his community. He was also a nationalist. He did a lot of organising during various uprisings, revolutions that went on in Ireland during the 1800s as well. He was fiercely known as a Fenian, and I think it's quite a shame that he seems to have just been lost to history. I do intend to come back to Thomas Ryan quite a lot on this podcast, because I've just collected so many songs of his, and they're very, very good. A lot of them are very, very good, and there's quite a few that I've figured out the airs to that I'd be delighted to share with you later on as the podcast progresses. Thomas Ryan, from the age of 18, joins the Fenian Brotherhood. He was very, very active with land league meetings, opposing evictions. He was involved in the United Irish League, their meetings. He was very much a go-to man of his village when it came to anything political, anything economic or political. He seems to have always had something to say about everything that went on in Drangan anyway, according to a lot of newspaper articles that I've found. And it's nice. I think it's a really nice thing to be able to breathe life back into some of his songs, because he was obviously a very important man of his time. A couple of weeks ago, I drove down to Dragon to find his grave, and I did. I visited his grave and took a few photographs of it. Asked around a few people there if they knew anything about Thomas Ryan. No one seemed to, until I got the name of a local historian, Eamon Hall. And Eamon, if you're listening, I very, very, very much appreciate all the help that you've done. Eamon Hall is the son of a historian from the area, a man called Michael Hall, who has done quite a lot of work collating local history. Apparently a few decades ago, Michael did quite a lot of work researching Thomas Ryan that never went anywhere. And I got in touch with Eamon Hall. I visited him at his farmhouse, explained what I'm doing with these songs, and he was absolutely delighted to hear what I was doing. And he's since gone back and dug through a lot of his father's old notes, and is sharing them with me as he finds them. So there's if you liked that song, guys, stay put, stick around, hit that subscribe button, because there's going to be a lot more songs by Thomas Ryan. Thanks to Eamon Hall for all the help that he's done in retrieving his father's work and sharing it with me. So I've one more song for you for today's episode. There's a good chance I might touch back on Slievenamon songs at a later date as well, because, as I said, there are very, very many poems and songs written about this mountain due to its prominence, both visually in the landscape and in mythology and folklore in Ireland. So this song is called I Love You, Tipperary, written by a man called Brian O'Higgins, who went by the pen name Brian Nabamba. As previously mentioned, a lot of these balladeers, whenever they wanted to write anything nationalist, anything that's seditious towards the British Crown, they kind of had to adopt a pen name to stop themselves being prosecuted and sent to Australia or New Zealand as punishment for writing a naughty song, which did happen at the time quite a lot due to the old penal laws that I'm always banging on about. So Brian Nabamba, was a Republican. He was a staff officer in the GPO in 1916 and was actually elected to Dáil Éireann in 1918, which is very, very significant role to have. He grew up in Clonmel town. He opposed the Free State in 1922, so he would have been involved in the Civil War somewhat as well. He was known to be a great orator, a great public speaker, and in 1935 he was chosen to deliver a speech at the unveiling of the Liam Lynch Memorial that is today and still on Knockmeadale Mountains. Liam Lynch was an IRA captain or a commander who was killed by the British while serving his country. The place where he died is where the memorial is today. It's close to Ballymacarbery, which is actually in Waterford, but it's just outside of Clonmel. It's in County Waterford, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll call it Tipperary because it's very close to the border. He was shot, and when he was approached by British troops, he basically said to the troops that shot him, "You've just shot one of the commanders of the IRA. Go and tell your captains who I am. I need a doctor and I need a priest." And they took him down to the local pub, the name of which escapes me, but it still stands today, and you can still go in there and have a pint of Guinness there today in Ballymacarbery, and that's where Liam Lynch died. Liam Lynch was a very, very big figure in the Republican movement at the time, and Brian Higgins being invited in to give an oration at the unveiling of a memorial to Liam Lynch is very indicative of how well respected Brian O'Higgins was at the time, Brian Nabamba. So anyway, this is I Love You, Tipperary. This comes from a book the book I've been reading is called Slievenamon, Song and Story. It's a collection of songs and stories about Slievenamon. And the tune to this is The Rocks of Bourne. And I can tell that immediately just by looking at it. The Rocks of Bourne was a very, very well-known song at the time. There's a lot of local songs that are written with this air, and it's one that you're going to hear time and time again. It references a lot of characters from Charles Kickham's novel Knocknagow as well, including Matt the Thresher and Nora Lahey. I love you, Tipperary, dear, for the sake of him who told the tale of homely Knocknagow, its heart's as true as gold. For the sake of Matt the Thresher's strength, and Nora Lahey's grace, I love you, Tipperary, though I never saw your face. I love you, Tipperary, dear, for the sake of Knockmealdown, for sake of smiling Slievenamon that never wore a frown, where sunbeams laughing all the while the lurking shadows chase. Oh, I love you, Tipperary, though I never saw your face. I love you, Tipperary, dear, for the sake of Galtymore, that gazes down in kingly pride on Barrow shore and Nore. For the sake of all the singing streams that o'er your bosom race, I love you, Tipperary, though I never saw your face. For the sake of all the beauty spots that help to make you fair, Clonmel and Cashel famed of old, and kindly hearted care, for Thurles, Nina, Carrick dear, and many another place. I love you, Tipperary, though I never saw your face. I love you best of all, perhaps, for the sake of one dear friend, within whose eyes your smiles and tears forever meet and blend, whose trust and friendship freely given no change could e'er efface. Oh, I love you, Tipperary, though I never saw your face. I love you, Tipperary, dear, for sake of each and all. By night and day on you a store may kindly blessings fall. My sorrow pass you lightly o'er, and never leave a trace. God bless you, Tipperary, though I ne'er may see your face. Right, that was I Love You, Tipperary by Brian Higgins, Brian the Bamba of Clonmel in Tipperary. So that's all we've got time for today. I hope you enjoyed that. If you do, please give a follow, give a like, share with your friends if you know anyone who might be interested in a highly obscure podcast digging up old songs and ballads from the 1800s of Ireland that no one has ever heard before. If you happen to know anyone that might be interested in that, do give them a message, let them know what I'm doing. It's always word of mouth is the best way that these new podcasts can grow. Basically, what I'm doing is not advertiser friendly, so it's utterly pointless me going the advertiser's route for what I'm doing, because there's going to be very, very little interest to that. I am your host, Bill O'Brien. You can follow me on Instagram, BaldBill, BAULDBILL. And if you do fancy, if you do feel like supporting the podcast, there is a Patreon as well. The links for that are all over my socials. It's BaldBill on Patreon. If you met me in the pub and I sang you a nice song, and if you'd buy me a pint, that's all I'm asking once a month. But obviously, there's no pressure. You don't have to. I do this for the love of what I do and to preserve these songs. And thank you very, very much for tuning in. And we'll see you again with another episode, hopefully next month.